Morning. Thank you for being here. The Board of Aldermen emergency meeting July 26, 2023 is now called to order. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for those watching at home. First Lady, thank you for representing the public today, so thank you. And thank you, Board, for being here. Thank you, City Manager, for arranging this meeting. Our invocation will be by Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
The Lord be with you. Thank you. Let us pray. Creator God, you made us in your own image. We ask today that you guide us to make decisions that reflect your image, that bend towards kindness and compassion. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now let us not cast stones so early in the morning. Item D is approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, is there a second? Alderman Allen, second by Alderman Lombardi. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, agenda is carried, motion carried. I'll call on Madam Alderman Lowe Davis to begin the discussion. Our emergency meeting today concerns the Today Show called it the United States of Heat. So that is part of what's going on today, not only in Southport, but in our entire country. So Alderman Davis, if you would lead our discussion.
Close to me, don't Thank you. Having heard a good bit in the community about outside workers, landscapers, and construction workers struggling in the heat, I wondered if we might find it advisable to consider allowing the city manager to determine changes on, that we would want to authorize her to have to give her the authority to consider allowing outside work to begin somewhat earlier. Right now, other than dumpsters and the street sweeper and so on, things can't start until 7 a.m. I don't know if anybody would even take advantage of this, so I'm open to hearing what everybody thinks, especially Dr. Hayden, whose master's degree is also in public health. My personal anecdotes here are my bedroom pillow is 100 feet from a major construction project behind me and 120 feet from a huge construction project to my left. To my right as I'm lying in my bed. And they start exactly at 7 o'clock. They're in their trucks ready to go. And I know it's 7 o'clock because I hear the hammers and the saws and everything, and it's already hot at 7 o'clock. Do we want to consider allowing them to start a little earlier? We have to weigh that against the disturbance to the city of loud noises earlier than normal, earlier than the limit that we've set, which is 7 o'clock. So I'm hoping to hear all of you on this, and especially Dr. Halem first.
Thank you. This is an important discussion in terms of heat-related illness. Think of the first time that we began studying it was when we looked at our military and they're overseas, and think of the heat that they encountered. And so what they had to do, they developed algorithms of how much weight they could carry, how long they could march, how long they could be in their uniforms before they would have to step out and let someone else take over, and they would have to hydrate. And it's sort of a similar paradigm for people who work outside. You work for a certain period of time, then you really need to get out of that sun, you need to hydrate and that type of thing. And you can make it through the day by doing that. Of course, youth forgives a lot of sins. And thank you, Robert Carroll, and it does. So the sun exposure and outdoor exposure that I would feel versus Alderman Carroll will be totally different. And it would obviously affect me, affects older people, and affects young children more so. So I think this is a good idea if they would like to use this option for emergencies, heat conditions, that type thing, weather conditions, because we want, first of all, I mean, I appreciate the public health comment, because that's one of the most important things we do for our citizens, the health of our city, the health of our citizens, the health of everyone who comes in our city. So if this would be of benefit to our contractors, then I think Alderman Lowe Davis, that was a great idea to at least give them the option to do so. They may not take up on it. They may want to be that 7 a.m., but at least it gives them the opportunity and lets them know we're thinking about them, and it reminds them that, hey, make sure that your crews are taking breaks properly and staying hydrated and that type thing. So those are my thoughts on it, Alderman Davis.
I'd also like to say that, what we're also thinking about, I hope, is other weather conditions. I mean, storms are rolling off the coast of Senegal regularly right now, and there's one that's just, I believe, southwest of the Cape Verde Islands, and it's one that seems to have some real possibility, and it's an exact position that likes to target the coast of North Carolina. So after major storms, after other events, tornadoes or whatever, we would maybe want to see contractors come in and be able to get going on road repairs, bridge repairs, dealing with flooding issues, things beyond what even our own city staff can handle. Earlier the better to get people back to normal.
I'd like to.
Under that, there would be a state of emergency, and then isn't that right, Alderman Allen? Is that your understanding as well? And under a state of emergency, then those things could be put in place quickly.
In my opinion, I understand what you're saying. However, I think it's a little overreach. My first years working was outside, summer, winter, rain, snow, sunshine. And it was up to the foreman to say, okay, it's too hot, we got to stop. It's not up to a city to say, you can't work in this weather because you got to stop. I don't see that. If you're repairing a broken water line, all of a sudden it gets hot, what do? Leave? Or do you stay there, finish the job, take the breaks that you need, and leave it up to the people in charge, not the municipality? That's my opinion.
Well, I think we're just talking about allowing a modification to the start time, correct? We're not mandating any other work practices. Right.
Not a mandate by any means.
I think I'd like to, I mean, it's hot down here in the summer. It just is. It's always hot. I think we need to have some kind of benchmark to tie this to when it comes in. If there's an anticipated heat index of some amount, then I think Bonnie had that little chart. So maybe when it hits the the orange or the red or something, on that, then it goes into effect. But I mean, it's hot. July and August are always hot.
Who determines that you can start early because it's warm or hot?
That's what I'm saying. We need some kind of data-driven benchmark to establish it.
Yeah, because
There's some standard, I think Bonnie's got a copy of, there's a standard sort of chart that shows when, danger, at what temperature and humidity level dangerous situations occur.
Yeah, Tom Stanley got me this from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So they're basically saying heavy work, the caution area would be 106.
Can't you, I assume the National Weather Service provides heat index forecasts?
I think it's on my phone, actually, the weather app.
Issue there, though, is, and I agree with John. Please notice that, John. That is correct. The heat index at 7 o'clock in the morning is not necessarily the same as at noon or at 3 o'clock and so on. So at what point would we be looking at and thinking about the heat index?
I mean, the forecast will give you a projection of what the heat index, I think, is supposed to be for that day. So, I mean, I'd suggest if we have a heat index forecast for whatever day, I mean, I don't know if we have to do it every day or, I don't know. It needs to be tied to something, I guess, is my point. I mean, it can't just be, wow, it's really hot today. Let's let them start early tomorrow. I mean, because, we'd do that the entirety of July and August, I think, if we did that. So it's
Right.
got to be tied to something.
So the forecast for the heat index is X. If we want to use 106, that's fine. So the forecast for that day, for that week, that type of thing, because they put it out a week in advance. I mean, they talked about the temperature in Buffalo for the next 3 days. So in that type. Thank you, Alderman Carroll. But my father was born in Buffalo. That's why I picked Buffalo. But anyway, so we could do that because I agree. You don't want them starting at 5:30 a.m. just because it feels hot and they feel like they can get done. But I'm not sure they would really want to start at 5:30 in the morning. I mean, but I think giving them the option is reasonable, and I think it's a good idea tying it to the heat index with the, in particular since there's data, there's algorithms, paradigms, that type thing that we can go by.
You brought up a key issue there. What time would we be thinking about moving the limit? Back to 6, making it 6:30? I don't think before 6 o'clock would probably be the most compassionate thing, but I'm not sure the people of this city would be willing to hear hammers and saws at 5:30 in the morning. I doubt they're going to be happy hearing them at 6:30. And so we do need to weigh that and determine what time we would be authorizing the city manager to make it possible for them to begin, if we do that.
So some of my questions, I guess, as it relates to the heat index is, how do we notify these contractors of this? So are we notifying them the night before that they can go to work early the next day, or are we giving them for the next 3 weeks, we're lifting this?
Cheyenne, for example, with this, Cheyenne has already been great about putting together a press release that we're ready to go. But more importantly, Kylie Barefoot, who was a contractor, said to Travis yesterday that Kylie feels this would be a real asset and that the building contractors would appreciate it. So he said what he would do is there's a way that they could even do social media and contact all those people who work that they know have permits, but as Kylie does inspections, he's going to bring the press release to the contractors so that they know if it is changed. I mean, the problem is, look at how long this heat wave's gone on. So I don't think you can have an end date. Again, it would be the city manager saying to the board, okay, I'm very concerned about this heat wave. I'd like to be able to start the workers at 6 a.m. and until, it starts to be reduced. If there's any objections, please let me know. And if there's objections, then we're going to have to pull an emergency meeting quick.
Can I ask a question? Has anybody come to you, Bonnie, and requested this?
No,
Nobody. So nobody has complained about the heat?
no.
Okay.
Everybody complains about the heat, but nobody does anything about it.
In summing up, it sounds like that one possibility to change the Code of Ordinances that require a public hearing, of course, is that they could start at 6 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. Contractors will get that out via social media, press release, word of mouth through the building inspector, Kylie Barefoot, and that we base this on the heat index. If 106 is the benchmark, then we could use that. The forecasted, or you could say any temperature above 90 something, if you want to tag it to that as well, heat versus heat index. Because, 95 degrees is 95 degrees. So anyway, so that's sounds like where we're going, and I will, if there's further discussion, we'll have it, or I'll entertain a motion.
Would it be easier if we ask the contractor to call and say we'd like to start early because it's going to be warm? Maybe that would be easier instead of trying to guess and try to notify them. Wouldn't it be easier for them to request it and say, yes, you can do it?
I think that's just going to be phone calls, and I could just see that. And then what if they call the utilities department, who doesn't know, and, I think that would cause more
Yeah.
issues. Right now, the sunrise doesn't even go up till 6:15, so I don't think they're going to start work in the pitch black.
Is this something that if we voted to do this today, giving the city manager the authority to modify the start time at the option of the supervisors and contractors, is this something we can accomplish today? You said public hearing. This is a change in an ordinance.
This does not require a public hearing.
Ordinance, Code of Ordinances, so we would not require, is that right, Madam Clerk, a hearing, is that correct?
Just, if I can just point out, so looking at next week on my handy little weather app, Monday, the heat index is 102, and that's the high. It's not, and then actually the temperature next week is projected to be in the upper 80s primarily. So, I mean, there's not even a day next week where we have a projected heat index of more than 102.
We
So, I
then
don't,
table this, take no action today and bring this to the public hearing, put it to the public meeting in August, and let people tell us what they think.
We've lost
to the
our
meeting.
window of them being able to do something.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But if it's not really necessary in the next week or so, this would give us a chance to hear from the public whether they can tolerate this.
What are you saying?
I mean, I think we need to just make a decision. I don't think we
I
need
agree
to
with
go
John. Doing the public hearing.
doing a
and
public hearing and
tabling,
get
it's-
everybody stirred up. It'll be, summer will be over by the time anything happens. I'm okay. What, 107, is that what the chart indicates?
I think it was 106, but golly, maybe it should be
106.
lower, 102.
Today's going to be high. Today, the anticipated is 107. But it's going to be 90 degrees, so a combination of 90 and the humidity creates 107.
I think the only thing you got to be careful of is you can't be doing this every day,
Right,
or that's just going to cause mass confusion.
right. What can we, well, but we just, yeah,
do
so
it.
what would you anticipate you doing, like, for the upcoming week? maybe like on Friday, you issue something for the upcoming week based on what the next week based on what the forecast is? Is that what you see?
Yeah, I mean, to me, well, let me back up. In some ways, I agree with Tom. These guys know when they got to pull their people off. They really do. When it gets too hot. I mean, I've seen it where I live, you know, all of a sudden. In fact, I see it on 211. They're not working, these guys. Those trucks are not out there. So I think the contractors do know that there's OSHA laws involved here. But if it's going to happen, you know, I would just rather that the judgment of the city manager, but he or she lets the board know first, and if there's an objection, then we would have a quick emergency meeting on that, but it would just be easier to do it that way. To do it every week. Yes, and then when it's like, okay, this is stupid, it's not in the, you know, forecast, then, okay, we're gonna stop it.
Is the standard then that the contractors would be required to look at before they could take this option, would be required to look at and know what the heat index predicted is?
Don't
And
complicate
then
it.
they
I
would
think
know?
you're complicating it. You know, I think, you know, if people want, and like you said, Lo, if people want to do it, fine. If the contractor says, no, we're going to start at 7, like Tom Stanley says, then that's up to them.
I argue against myself here somewhat, but I think it's a mistake to just carte blanche say, in the summertime, you can start at 6. I mean, how do they know whether they can start at 6 or 6:30?
We would have to do a PR thing like we're going to do now. That because of the excessive heat, we will, I don't know, there's a draft Cheyenne has. Until further notice, you may start at sunrise is what I have. Because right now, 6 a.m. is not sunrise. It's 6:15 now because it's getting longer or shorter or whatever. So that's what we would try to get out. But then again, when we stop it, we're going to have to redo this again. And there's going to be some people who are going to ignore it. If they can start earlier, they'll do it. No, Rich could not get internet. He emailed me last night. So he said, just tell him I'm in favor of it. That's what he said. But he's in favor of it, but he couldn't do it. He says, I can't access internet. So he said, forget me.
And, you know, Mayor Pro Tem is not here either. And I'm sure she would want to do what would be best for our city and citizens, and we looking out for the contractors. Basically, you're just giving the contractors the option. Doesn't mean they're going to take it if it's severe heat. And the wisdom of Alderman Lombardi, these foremen know what to do.
The option anyway. Nobody can tell them you're going to work. They're going to stop when it's too hot. And the men are going to want to stop.
I know Alderman Davis asked me to look at other towns. First of all, I even did a statewide one. I got hardly any responses. But if they're doing anything with their schedules, it's with their staff. They're not doing anything with the private contractors. Or I did not receive any response at all.
I'm in favor of us adopting this and leaving it to the discretion of the city manager. I think that there's a stopgap in there that if the city manager requests this option, we can disagree or agree with it. And then at some point during the process, if we feel like the heat index is dropped to a safe level, we can come back to her and request that it be reversed. So I don't see a real problem with it. I think that people are going to complain if we've got people doing work, but they're going to complain anyway.
My thoughts, I think, giving contractors, people that work outside, the option to start earlier, I think is an appropriate move under emergency weather conditions and that type of thing, whether it's storms or any other type of emergency that, God forbid, that we may have, that we would need to have some sort of recovery, but then we would probably have an emergency order in. But I think in terms of the heat that we're having, giving them the option, I think is very reasonable. And I think sunrise is better than an actual time because they're not going to be working in the dark. And as Alderman Lombardi says, the foreman will know what to do as well. So I think we're just letting our citizens know we're thinking about the people that work in town and that we want to give them the option to start earlier during these potential for heat-related illness during this time.
I can agree with that. I just want to say that starting an hour earlier makes no difference when it's hot. Believe me, we've done it. It makes no difference. You're working, you're an hour earlier, it's just as hot. It's not that much difference when it's going to be that hot. What you said.
Any further discussion? Okay. I will entertain a motion if you'd like for me to make the motion, or Alderman Davis, would you like to make it? Or?
Be sure we get the wording on this right. How would you recommend that we word this?
I have the language right here. We added one provision that says, during adverse weather or emergency events, the city manager, after notifying the Board of Aldermen, may modify the start and ending times for outside private contractors to work.
A motion that's in the ordinance draft and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I just clarify a little bit? So for heat, we informally sort of using 106 heat index? Is that what we're doing, or I mean, what?
Yeah, we can. I'm sorry. Yes. Are we on? Yes. Yes, we can if you want, but you should probably put that in there, amended to say that. Based on whatever it is, national OSHA standards.
The problem is the statement includes extreme or inclement weather. So if you're going to say the 106, then are you going to say something about storms or leave it vague?
If the state or the feds declare a state of emergency, then this doesn't have any, this is no longer viable. So I'm not sure it really needs to say any. Right now, I think it probably just needs to be limited to extreme heat, because if we get a hurricane, there's going to be a state of emergency before it even gets here. So that'll kind of negate this whole thing, I think. So I'd recommend just doing it. I think what we ought to, if in the opinion of the city manager, heat conditions are too dangerous, then he or she has the authority to modify start times for contractors.
Would it be, does the city manager, he or she, have to notify the board?
Yes, that's in the motion.
You have to.
Or we're proactively giving her the authority to do it. So, I mean, and if she's abusing it, we're going to just haul her back in here and tell her to stop.
Yeah, you do that. You do that. Let's
And then you'll
restate
get my
the
heat
motion.
index up.
Could we restate the motion?
Madam Clerk, would you read that motion again, please?
During adverse weather or other emergency events, the city manager, after notifying the Board of Aldermen, may modify the start and ending times for outside private contractors to work.
That's the motion and a second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so the citizens know that we are thinking about the contractors in our city, and we want to make sure that they stay well, stay safe, and it was a very good discussion today. I'll entertain board comments. Alderman Allen? Alderman Carroll? Alderman Lombardi? Alderman Davis? Okay, thank you. City Manager, any comments before we go? Okay. All right, well, thank you for this meeting, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.